And that's how I spent 2 hours in the cinema watching a dinosaur punch a giant monkey. So anyway, hello everybody. Welcome to again. Well, no, that was the first time I went to see it because I'd not bothered with the streaming.
Yes, but you've seen dinosaurs punch monkeys before.
I have seen them punch monkeys before, but not in big surround sound kind of terrible film. Absolutely stinking film, but you know.
You're a triumph of hope over expectation, aren't you? Really?
I think the problem is it's just Hollywood films these days. They're product.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not.
Absolutely, they're a vehicle for the merchandising.
Yeah, anyway. Anyway, hello everybody. Welcome to the interesting modelling company midweek show. As you might have noticed tonight, we're all a bit kitted up because I've got here a man who. He doesn't. He lives dangerously. A man who I really have listened to him on most things, but when he starts talking airbrushes, I do pay attention.
Oh,
I thought
nice.
That's all right. And I thought tonight we will actually talk airbrushes because there's been a lot of airbrushing stuff going down recently, and
in the hood,
yeah, in it, right? You know. And I thought, yeah, we'll talk to somebody who knows a thing or two about the old airbrushing. So anyway, evening, Drew. How are you?
Evening, yeah, very well actually.
Right, okay, that's the tick box, banter tick box.
Yeah,
excellent. Right.
Banter box tick. No, very, very well. Just sort of plodding along and thoroughly tired of this pandemic now. I had my second shot yesterday, so I'm now transmitting in 10G. So,
do you know what? I got my second shot tomorrow. I got to go to Shepton Mallet.
Shepton Mallet.
Going to Shepton Mallet because owing to a bit of a Horlicks in terms of my letter informing me that about my second shot, which I should have had a week ago, half a mile down the road. So unfortunately, the letter kind of got lost in the post.
Mine was done entirely by text.
Well, yeah, I don't know why.
I got sent a text and it told me to follow the link and followed the link and booked in, and that was it both times. It was very efficient, I have to say.
So I now have to drive 30 odd miles tomorrow to Shepton Mallet. To have my second jab. So, but it is via on that route. It is via Wells and some other places. So
yeah, I mean it's a pretty enough road, isn't it, down that part
so.
Somerset. So you can take it the afternoon off and find somewhere to have a cup of tea and
well, I got to be there by 11:10 tomorrow morning. So, being Mr. Cautious, I'm leaving at about 8:30.
Absolutely. Yeah, clearly, I would do exactly the same.
The fact is that when I went to the cinema on Monday, it's like, oh, this is no problem. It's only 20 minutes up the road. Got onto the M5. That was it. M5 was absolutely solid. And
I would always give loads of time for the M5 anyway. I never trust it at the best of times, especially over that Gordano interchange part, all that sort of stuff. It's just
anyway. Welcome to Somerset Live here, in which
we discuss the view of the world from our relevant parts of Somerset.
Yeah, which we talk about. We talk about how things in various parts of Somerset affect our lives. This is a good one tonight. Actually, this is a Somerset special. Although I get the feeling, the Industrial Light and Magic have failed to put your background in for some reason.
There is a reason for that, John. A very good reason, and it's because if I switch camera angles, like so, to something else, for whatever reason, I had an image in there earlier on, and it just blanked it all out and put the back screen into it instead.
You've suddenly got a bit pixelated and a bit kind of dial up for some reason.
That's just me. I'm sure it'll sort itself out. I think it's various people. I think it's a lot better over the past few months in general, streaming and stuff. I think less people are doing it, so perhaps bandwidth contentions aren't quite so bad. But
yeah, I'll tell you what I'm going to do is, whilst you talk for a couple of seconds, we're going to talk about airbrushes tonight. So you fill in talking about airbrushes for a few seconds, whilst I just go and shut down other machines here. So
yes. No, I think there's been a lot of stuff going on about airbrushes in the last few weeks, and I've certainly on my own modelling page, I've said a bit about airbrushes and other things in the last few weeks. and it's to do with skill levels and expectations, I think, and where we are with the hobby these days compared to certainly sort of 30, 40 years ago when the likes of you and I were starting out. I think perhaps today expectations are much higher.
Well, I think it's.
But people still need to go through a learning process, and I think there's a lack of patience with that from some quarters that people need to have a think about, and that's what I'm trying to address without actually being too.
I think part of the problem there is also that these days people are doing their modelling in the spotlight. They're doing it, kind of like almost live, and. Unlike, 20, 30, 40 years ago, people were building models and they were developing skills, but they were doing it almost, it
was a solitary hobby, wasn't it?
A solitary hobby without anybody, any contact with anybody. Now they've got the glaring kind of like spotlight of social media where nobody wants to make a mistake. They all want to pop out the womb perfect modelers and be banging out Miguel Jimenez level models, and it's like it doesn't quite work like that.
I think quite a lot of the time it's why I'm quite open, and I think you are, and I know Spencer is. We're very open about the amount of stuff that we build that either hits the bin or gets shelved or whatever. People think when the likes of you or I or Spencer or anybody show a model drops off the end of the production line once a month or whatever, that's all we do is produce successful models. And it's very, very far from the truth. We're still always learning. We're still always trying new techniques, and sometimes they don't work, and sometimes that model goes in the bin. But I think some modelers try perhaps not to admit when something's gone so badly, they'd be better off cutting their losses and starting afresh.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I kind of get that a little bit because it's, you can spend significant sums of money on the hobby. And whereas if I spent 70 or 80 pounds on a kit and it's going really, really badly, I still think I'm better off cutting my losses on a per hour basis and starting something else than fighting it.
Yeah.
But I get that some people don't really feel that way. I don't know what the answer there is, but there's kind of like an expectation that somebody's going to buy all the kit and immediately be producing the stuff that those of us that have been doing it for 30 or 40 years are doing, but are also making a mess of, not infrequently as well.
Well, as I often that metaphor that I often dredge out at this point is it's like somebody going out and buying the Neil Peart signature drum kit and then suddenly thinking they're going to be able to kind of like bang along to Tom Sawyer, and it's like, it doesn't work that way.
No, back in 1985 when I was looking at Verlinden's, Francois and his stuff, I aspired to it, and I've gradually been working towards it for the intervening 35 years.
Yes, absolutely.
I think I think we all do, but it's particularly noticeable with airbrushing. I'm finding at the moment.
Well, I was going to say there was it's an honest question, and I understand why people ask it. Honest question from guy on one of the pages the other day said, I've just bought an airbrush. What's the best thinning ratio? Which is that is an absolutely honest question. You see, the thing that you always have to kind of the caveat you have to give them is that all depends on your airbrush, the paints you're using, and your compressor. And it is there isn't like a one size fits all magic formula that you can say, okay, 50-50, start from there. But it's at that stage that you sometimes you just have to get in there early and say, well, here is the generic advice, but your experience is going to be governed by the equipment and the paint you're using.
And I think people, it's a question I get asked quite a lot. If I post a YouTube video showing me spraying some varnish or whatever, what's your, what ratios are you using? And, in all honesty, I couldn't tell you. I can give you a rough ballpark figure, but I work more to a set of rules. If it's not coming through smoothly, you either need to up the pressure or thin the paint. If it's coming through too much, you need to close the brush down, drop the pressure, do something like that. There's these kind of mixtures where within a band, simply increasing the pressure or opening the brush a bit more or adding a bit more thinner will all do the same thing.
Yeah.
In terms of the finish you're going to get. And with experience, you just learn, which is the best. If I'm spraying Mr. Color and I'm not getting a smooth finish, I'm very much more likely, in fact, I will almost certainly add more thinner rather than up the pressure, because upping the pressure can result in spider webbing and all that kind of issue with Mr. Color. So it's drop the pressure, thin the paint, and then you'll get the result you want. And I think people are looking for too prescriptive, an answer in that sort of circumstance. And you can sometimes come off as not being very helpful when you say, "Well, it depends."
Well, it's funny you mention Mr. Color, because I found this stuff that you put me onto, the Mr. Color UV cut,
the GX stuff, yeah,
the GX stuff. You have to thin that considerably, and you have to thin that considerably more than you actually think you need to thin it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's almost like it's like a concentrate.
Yeah, I will very rarely spray that thinned any less than 80% thinner.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is, because it flashes off so quickly, you can get 2 or 3 coats on in one session without any trouble at all.
Yeah.
And it's it gives a plenty glossy enough finish to help with adding washes and tidying stuff up and preventing silvering and all that sort of stuff very, very quickly and very easily. It's as long as you don't flood it on and get runs, it's pretty much bomb proof, I think.
No, absolutely. And this is the thing I've come to appreciate about working with lacquer thinner now, is that the lacquer thinner is actually your friend when it comes to when it comes to how forcibly you can apply a layer, let's put it that way. Because unlike even unlike water-based acrylics, or even unlike enamels, lacquers, and to some extent, let's qualify that, lacquers, and let's just say the acrylic lacquers like Tamiya, Gunzi, AK Real Color, they're a bit more forgiving if you are a little bit clumsy with them, because the thinner is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah, and you have to appreciate that with the kind of thinning ratios we're using, 80 or 90% of what you apply to the model is going to flash off.
Yeah.
The vast majority of what goes down on the model. So if something looks terrible, step away for 10 minutes and let stuff flash off and see what you've got then. Because, a huge percentage of the time, what you'll have if you let it flash off for 10 minutes will be absolutely fine. And if it isn't, and you're using stuff like Mr. Color or any of these, you can actually use their own lacquer thinner to strip it, and it'll take seconds to strip it.
Mm-hmm.
But don't immediately think that, oh my God, this has gone wrong, I need to strip it. Step away for 10 minutes, go back, see what you've got, and then make a decision.
Well, it's funny. We had this discussion before we went on air today, because when I was up at the cinema on Monday, I did invest myself in a can of Halford's Rover British Racing Green, which is the colour that I use on my actual Mini to paint my little Fujimi Mini. And I thought, right, okay, we'll fire up today. I prepped the area, I warmed the can up, let it settle for a while, shook it up, let it settle for a while. I put a tooth coat on the model, that was fine, left that for a good couple of hours, went back, just flattened it down slightly, then put a wet coat on there. And It's one of those situations where paint direct to plastic, it ended up picking up all the swirls and some of the texture in the molding, the actual molding. And I was talking to Drew about this beforehand, and what I did this afternoon was flattened it down again, then went over with my custom mix that I did from Tamiya gloss acrylics. Still hasn't solved the problem. Drew's advice was strip it, start again, and it's like, yeah,
strip it, start again. I think the problem can be that the Halford's acrylic lacquers in the spray cans, they are, I think, quite a bit hotter than any of the modelling lacquers.
Yeah,
and it will still bite into a surface and throw any issues like swirl marks and all that sort of stuff into sharp relief rather than covering it. I think I'm sort of moving away from using primers an awful lot these days. If I don't need to use a primer, I won't prime. Simple as that. But for people doing stuff like using these, Halford spray cans, I think a barrier coat of some kind of undercoat stroke primer is still going to be the best route forward to prevent that happening. Because those swirl marks and that kind of slight roughening in some places on your finish, they'll just be there until you strip the paint and sand a whole lot back and start again. You're never going to get rid of it. It'll show through a matte coat. It's just one of those things that happens with those sorts of paints. So, yeah, strip it, start again.
Yep, and I shall strip it, start again, and I shall give it a barrier coat of Tamiya fine white primer this time.
Yeah, give it a sand over with some wet 800 grit wet and dry, which is plenty fine enough. Make sure you put a barrier coat on, and I suspect then your overcoats will be fine.
Well, I won't be using this anyway, for the simple reason that there's nothing wrong with the paint. It's very good, and it perfectly matches the color on my car, even down to the metallic effect. But it's too massively out of scale for 1/24th.
Yeah, the flake is still going to look wrong, isn't it? It's still going to be flaky wrong in the metallic. So yeah, you have to dial it back.
The good thing about this is, though, because it is car modelling, so to speak, is when I actually do get round to putting the next, going back and starting again and putting that green coat back on in whatever form I'm going to be doing it. I do then have the luxury of being able to stuff it in a box and leave it for a good 3 or 4 days to just really let it, cure off.
Let it cure. Let it go.
There is no rushing with cars. You just shove them in a box and that's it, and then come back to it, and then you can start tri-zacking it and waxing it, and
then 5 months later you go, oh, I remember that, and pick up where you left off.
Anthony Bird says, do zero colors do a scale mini color you could use? They probably do, Anthony, but I'm not going to kind of like go massively overboard on this one. It's, to be honest with you, it's not that I'm even going to be building this model in a kind of concours finish anyway. It is going to be as mine is, almost with a layer of dust on it, with little primer patches on it and stuff. So it doesn't have to be a kind of a spankingly gorgeous, not like that Bugatti build that we've been featuring on the page from that Italeri kit, which is it's just sumptuous, absolutely. I mean, part of me wants to build that kit, but part of me also knows that what's the point?
I mean, it's apart from anything else, to get a finish that is worthy of going on that kit will take a lot of effort.
It's a bit like John Chung's space shuttle. It's a commitment.
Lord alive, that's insane, isn't it?
That John Chung's space shuttle, I said to Spencer the other day, on one single area of that project is probably a lifetime's scribing of other kits for me. Yeah. I look at say, look at some of the old Hella stuff I've got here, like that Uragan, and thinking to myself, might have to rescribe that. That's nothing. That's absolutely nothing compared to what John Chung has done with that shuttle.
And he's so nice as well. He's so nice.
And apparently he's only in his late 20s or something.
I don't know that, but he's an extremely nice chap as well. He's Canadian.
I'd try and get him on the show. Actually, I think that would be good to have. I think definitely to get John on the show talking about his shuttle model.
But I've been watching what he's been doing for the last 6 or 7 months, and sort of it's culminated in him starting this space shuttle, and it's next level, isn't it? It's absolutely next level.
Yep. Let's talk about our toys, shall we? Let's talk about our airbrushes. So, shall we bore the ladies and gentlemen with our history of how we got into airbrushing? Or
what was your first airbrush?
Actually. Sorry.
What was your first airbrush?
My first airbrush was actually that Badger external spray gun that was sold by Humbrol as a modeller's airbrush. Right. So essentially, it was a Badger. Is it a 250?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the one with the plastic thing. Yeah.
External mix.
Yeah. Then in 1987, I did invest in a Badger 200.
See, about 87, 88 was when I got my first Humbrol Hobbycraft. Oh Lord! And I think I think there's a huge swathe of modelers of roughly my age in the UK for whom that was the start. The starting point for their airbrushing exploits was that Humbrol Hobbycraft, and in retrospect, it was a pretty awful airbrush. It has to be said.
But Francois Verlinden, he recommended the Exacto version of that in his book. He said it was a proper modeller's airbrush, and it was like,
yeah. But then Chris Wochop uses an Aztec. Enough said, really, isn't it? But I found that it wasn't really built to withstand a 17, 18-year-old clumsy airbrushing attempts. It was, largely plastic. And the weirdest thing was if you sprayed metallics through it, you could never clean it afterwards.
Yeah.
In fact, when I then, in sort of 1990, when I moved on to a Badger 200, I was terrified of using metallics because of the bad experience with the Hobbycraft, never been able to get the metallic flake out. So to realise that it was the work of seconds to completely clean metallics out of a Badger 200 was something of a revelation to me. But what a terrible airbrush. But not helped by the fact that I didn't have a compressor, so I was using buying a couple of cans of air every few weeks.
Yes.
And you didn't have it. And the thing with using cans of air is that you've got no practice time.
No, I think that's that was when I was lucky in as much as being at art college, I kind of borrowed some of the equipment from the art department. And also got the opprobrium of the head of the graphics department for, quotes, putting Airfix paint through a De Vilbiss Aerograph Sprite. I cleaned it, it's nothing wrong with it.
I'm not sure how small the needle and nozzle is on one of those. I'm sure it's probably no smaller than the smallest stuff we use now.
I think he was more used to it being used for kind of inks.
Yeah.
But I also borrowed the compressor they had there, which was actually a foot pump with a holding tank, which is pretty. Do you know what? It worked. It was quiet.
Yeah.
And you built up the pressure, and you got some exercise at the same time. Nothing wrong with that. So I'm just cleaning my airbrushes here, people. So carry on talking with yourself.
In terms of using the old cans of air, you've got no practice time because you've got a very few minutes, and every second of using those cans of air at 4 or 5 pounds a pop, mattered. So it was really a case of get the paint down, get the airbrush cleaned, and sort of back away slowly before the whole can freezes up.
Yes. I think there are people of a certain generation who remember the frostbite from a can of
and having a bowl of water.
Was it Mogramer or something?
Mogramer, wasn't it? Yeah, the blue and white cans. Yeah.
Yes.
Having a bowl of warm water next to you to build the pressure up in the can when it was.
And also prise your fingers off the top of it when the frostbite kicked in. But as I say, but then in 1987, because I started my first job back then, I invested in a diaphragm compressor, which was awesome source because suddenly now I had a continuous airflow, even if it did go for a walk and take me and the airbrush with it at times. But that was it. I was like, I always remember autumn 1987. Started work down the local newspaper. I had money in my pocket, burning money in my pocket, and I bought the Badger 200 was £39.95 plus postage, and the compressor was about the same, probably a bit more expensive. But I just remember firing it up for the first time and thinking to myself, "Hey, I've arrived." I mean,
I can remember when I got the Badger 200, and then sort of within weeks, I went into my local model shop, and I ordered the Revel Profi compressor, which was an absolutely brilliant compressor, and did, in fairness, lasted me over 20 years.
Yeah.
Before I had to replace it. I have had in my entire modelling career of over 40 years precisely 3 compressors. One lasted 20 years, one lasted 10 months, and the one I've currently got, the Iwata I've currently got, has been here since 2015, I think, and is still going great guns. So,
well, touch wood, I've got I invested in a Sparmax compressor. Oh, sorry, this is 10 years ago now. Yeah, 2011 I bought this one. I actually saw it. It came up on one of the I think it was Amazon somewhere today. I think they're now about 230 quid, which, people think, oh, that's all right if you've got 230 quid to throw around on your hobby and everything. But for me, it was one of those kind of no-brainer investments. It was going to get used all the time.
Yeah.
And I wanted something that was going to be reliable. And the moment this thing turned up and I unpacked it, let's just say I was immediately impressed by just the quality of the fitting.
I remember being there when you got it.
Were you?
Yeah.
I think you were, actually, yeah. It was just everything about it reeked quality.
Yeah. I mean, I paid back in 1991. I paid £200 for that Revel Profi, and I got 20 years out of that before it failed. That compressor owed me nothing.
No, absolutely.
I spent 80 quid on a compressor with a tank from eBay, and it lasted me 10 months.
Same here.
I spent £250 on this Iwata compressor I've currently got, and I've had that for over 6 years.
Yeah,
it's
to me, this comes back to the thing I've often said about you're seeing people kind of like they're building, they built their Dragon Tiger tank and they've got 3 model tracks on it, and they've got a Aber etch, and they've got a metal gun barrel for something else, and they've got resin stowage, and and it's like and they're having problems painting it because they're painting it with some kind of like 20 quid airbrush. Although later on we will talk about 20 quid airbrushes because
I've seen you and Spence been trying 20 quid airbrushes, and that's where I made the argument that the other thing that you guys are bringing to the equation is experience, which helps with something that perhaps isn't a top flight piece of engineering. You're just you're gonna work around any issues with it without even registering there was an issue.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And perhaps people with less experience are going to come up against issues that seem, if not insurmountable, very, very difficult, and it's an experience thing.
But they probably have those same issues, even if they went out and bought an Iwata or even a Neo or something like that, or a Procon. Like I said, I do apologise tonight, everybody. I thought that as we're talking airbrushes tonight, it would also be very good for me to just carry out some routine maintenance on my airbrushes while we're talking. So I apologise. But actual modelling content. It's not just all tonight. We're actually doing actual modelling content tonight.
Yeah. So let me just switch a second. So this is.
He's going to get clever. Ah, here we go.
So that's a Badger. Can you still hear me, by the way?
I can hear you, yeah.
Excellent. That's just checking. So that's a Badger 200, and this is a Badger 200 gravity feed that I got in about 1995. This hasn't even got a needle or a trigger in it at the moment. I suspect I haven't used this airbrush for nearly 20 years. But I never get rid of airbrushes because I never know when I might want to use it again. But as a beginner, I don't know what price these are now, John.
I tell you what,
85, 90 quid.
A shout out to the posse tonight. Go and have a look and see if you can find out how much a Badger 200 gravity fed airbrush is, and then post it up in the comments, and we will report back. So work for your supper, people. Work for your supper.
I see Stephen Moore saying his Badger 200 is 40 plus years old and still going strong. I have got another Badger 200 somewhere, a siphon feed one. I can't even find it at the moment. That's how long it is since I last used it.
Well, my Badger 200s would have been. I've still got them. They possibly can still be going strong. But the problem I had with both the Badger 200s was that the siphon part of it came away from the main body.
Oh, really? Oh,
on two of them.
Do you know what? I've heard that happening a few times, but I've never had it happen to my one, which is in a drawer somewhere here. But yeah, I was a Badger sort of acolyte for many years, probably from 1991 to about 2008. Excuse me. And this one here, this Badger 100 GF, I got in about 2001. Back in the old days of Modelers Underground, you might remember.
I do remember Modelers Underground.
I treated myself to that, and I used that. That was my first double action airbrush. And I used that through to about 2008 before I upgraded. But again, that is still a perfectly fine airbrush. I suspect if I connected that up tonight, it would spray perfectly. But you just kind of, I love airbrushes so much that I constantly obtain new airbrushes.
You're like Jay Leno with his cars.
Yeah, and in fact, I've got, hopefully, I was speaking to Mr. Hills last week.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, indeed. About the Pro Convoy, the PS266, with a 0.5mm needle to try it out as a daily driver. And I've said, if you can get one, Andy, I'll take one off you. I'll have it. So watch out for a review on that. Hopefully, if Andy can get hold of one for me in the near future.
So you went from a Humbrol Modeler's airbrush to a Badger 200 gravity fed, then a 150.
No, I went from the Badger. I went from the Hobbycraft, the Humbrol Hobbycraft, to a Badger 200 siphon feed, and then in about 1995 or 6, I went to the gravity feed that I've just shown.
Right.
And the essential reason for the gravity feed was just because it made it more agile. It was easier to get into corners and stuff with it when you were spraying camouflages. But I still say the Badger 200, I've achieved some of the best freehanding camouflage I've ever done with that.
Yeah.
I've ever done with any airbrush. So yeah, I went from there, and then in about 2001, like I say, I got the Badger 100 GF double action. And that saw me through to 2008 when I got my first Iwata.
Carry on talking amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
I've got something on the floor.
What he's doing.
Don't worry. It's Iwatas.
Oh, just Andrew's just said the Procon we discussed due early June, so hopefully I'll have that in the next couple of weeks. So excellent, Andy. Thanks for that, mate. When you get it, just let me know, and I'll phone up and we'll throw some money your way. But yeah, in 2008, I sort of decided finally to. There was a lot of talk about Iwatas, so I got an Iwata, the HP C Plus. Yeah, I think it was. That's with Rory now. That I sort of moved that on when I replaced that 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been with Iwatas ever since, pretty much, haven't I? For the last 10 years. And we've been through various assorted.
You're going to have to do a drum solo for a couple of seconds because I've just got to go and attempt something. So, spot on.
Right. So, so there was, for a while, everybody was using trigger action, the trigger airbrushes. So I got one of these TR2s. And it is a great airbrush. It's great for putting lots of paint down if you need that sort of thing. But I just found that although it's a really easy airbrush to hold and spray with, it still felt unnatural to me to be airbrushing like that. So that was kind of a fairly short-lived experiment, if you like, in my airbrushing. There's a Badger Renegade, which the hobby company provided to me a few years ago to test out. That's a double action airbrush, very fine needle. And I actually used this as my daily driver for a good 2 or 3 years. I did find some issues with the color cups. Clears, for whatever reason, clear varnishes and stuff would pick up a yellow tint in the color cup. So I'm not sure if that was some kind of oxidizing happening when the thinner and paint was in the color cup. But that kind of made me move away from it a little bit. But it's still there and it still does get used. One of those airbrushes that, although I'm largely an Iwata fan, if somebody said I'm looking at the Badger Renegade, I would say, yeah, get one. It's a lovely airbrush. It's well balanced. It sprays nicely. Good airbrush. So you're just having a run through of all my airbrushes tonight, guys, because I've got a lot of them. So the kind of counter Iwata, if you like, is the Harder and Steenbeck, and that's the Infinity. Infinity, I believe it's the Infinity, 2-in-1. Really nice airbrush, but I don't like them. This is one of those really, really personal things. It's a great airbrush, but it's just never felt comfortable to use to me. And I also find them surprisingly fragile. The needles and the nozzles seem to be very, very easily damaged or bent, which I've never really experienced with an Iwata unless I really abused them badly. So yeah, there's the that's the Harder and Steenbeck. A lot of people swear by them, and they're certainly at the top range of airbrushes that are available. But I've just never got on with it. Never liked it. In fact, that one was a present that was bought for me by an ex-girlfriend. I hasten to add, she's not my ex-girlfriend because the airbrush isn't good. Yeah, great brush, not my kind of thing. But again, I can't really not recommend it because clearly it's a good airbrush. Then we got a little bit experimental. And I bought this little Grex single action. And the point for me of the Grex was I wanted something to put a lot of paint down, cover large areas of varnish and that sort of stuff. So I thought a little Grex single action would be the answer to that, and it turned out to be anything but. The problem is, because it's a single action, you control the needle by screwing it in and out, but it's always open. What I was finding was that when I was opening it far enough to get the paint flow I wanted, paint would flow through on its own just under gravity from the color cup to the nozzle and out of the nozzle and build up around the nozzle. And sometimes when even if you started off the model, as Jen would always have a go at me for not doing, I could still end up with spatters building up in there and going over the finish. So had this been a siphon feed, it would have been fine because it would have needed the Venturi effect to suck the paint up. So once the air was turned off, under gravity, the paint would have just returned to the color cup and it would have been fine. but gravity feed and wide open nozzles on single actions don't really work. Yeah, Jen, I kind of find that I don't know what it is about the Infinity. I just don't like it. Never did. Tried it numerous times, and fragile. That's the problem. I found them really fragile as well. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I got the Iwata HPCH to replace my HPC Plus. My HPC Plus has now been passed on to somebody else, my brother, who uses it and likes it. But this is pretty much my daily driver these days. I use it for sort of 90% of my airbrushing. And unlike John and people trying out the cheaper airbrushes, I've never done that. I've always bought the more expensive side of airbrushes. So this is about 230, 240 pounds maybe. But I fully expect that to last me a lifetime. It's Iwata. It's just the best of the best. Iwatas are. And I've been using that for the last few years. And then just last month, I got the GSI PS771, which is completely, all the parts of this are completely interchangeable with the Iwata custom micron. This is a 0.18 nozzle, and from the custom microns that I've tried, this is pretty much the same airbrush. I think this was about 270 pounds. But this will be used purely for very, very fine line work. Oh, hello, you're back.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, carry on.
This will be used probably for only 5 or 10% of any airbrushing I do. It's purely for fine lines, purely for really fine detail work. And other than that, it will sit in my rack, in my airbrush holder. While this, the HPCH, is my daily driver. Unless and until, like I say, having discussed it with Andrew at Antics, I get hold of the PS266 and see how that works. But never be afraid to experiment with airbrushes. So that's a brief run through of my airbrush history and where we are now, which is with the HPCH, the PS771, and hopefully very shortly another GSI. But the GSI stuff is made by Iwata as well, I believe. So your quality is pretty much guaranteed.
Excuse me. Well, I might be in the market for a new head assembly for an Iwata Eclipse because it's just dropped on the floor. Can I find it? Never mind. It will. It's one of those things. It'll either show up in Nailsy because it'll have bounced that far, they've gone across into the next town, or it will just be literally right under my feet. But it's because it's a bit dark in here now. It's just annoying. Yeah, I've actually got a magnet, so it's under my feet somewhere, but it's just really annoying that it happens live on the internet. But
while you're trying to show the airbrush off, and you
shot myself in the foot. So there we go. But never mind. This is the perils of doing live cleaning of airbrushes on the internet. So sorry, I missed that bit. You're getting another GSI airbrush.
Yes, like I said, I spoke with Andy Hills at Antics, and he's getting me a PS266 with the 0.5mm nozzle, which I'm going to hopefully will then become my daily driver if it's
right
up to the job, shall we say.
What's the retail for that?
I think the retail is about £98.
That's not bad.
It's still you've got the really the really lower end stuff, the 30 £35 airbrushes, and they're going to do the job, experience level notwithstanding. But I always kind of tell people if they can afford to wait and save another month or two, go up, go move up to the next level, which is around the £100 mark or whatever. And if you can still save a bit more, move up again. Don't go for the best that you can afford. Absolutely. I understand that some people are really up against it, especially at the moment, and it's a case of the cheapest or nothing. And I get that. But if you're not in that situation, get the best you can afford.
We say I would be genuinely curious for your assessment of one of these Fender airbrushes, because Spencer and I have been trying them out and generally been kind of quite impressed that they seem to belie their kind of budget status. And in fact, the quality of the componentry seems to belie their budget status.
I'm more than happy to try one. It's not. It's important to say I'm not dissing those airbrushes.
No. I'm curious as to whether, because the thing is, this is me spending your money now, Drew. In order to do it, you've really got to do one literally fresh from the box, not one that Spencer or I have been using. Is an actual proper full-on assessment of one. We'll have a talk about that off air. Actually, I'm sure there's a way around doing that. But yeah, I think to have your assessment of one of these.
I'm more than happy to do that. But for me, that is like the third of the PS266.
No, we'll have a talk about it. Like I say,
which Andy has just said, RRP is £99 for that one, and it will be in the shop at £89. So obviously, my recommendation if people are looking to get an airbrush is to go to Andy and get one of them.
Absolutely.
I'll never tire of playing with airbrushes and experimenting with them. It's one of the things. Quite often, I won't do any modelling for a week because I'm just spraying little bits of plastic and trying new stuff and new techniques and new airbrushes and stuff like that. So always happy to try new stuff.
Well, one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing at some stage in the future is I'm going to do another one of these infernal pop-up lives, but I'm going to be airbrushing doing the tricolor camo on the little Zvezda Jagdpanther, but I'm going to do it with a Badger 200. So a brand spanking new Badger 200 that has not been used yet, and essentially just kind of show what can be done with, frankly, it's an entry level airbrush, and it's as simple as they come.
We're back to saying experience tells.
Yeah, but
experience tells. But then again,
that's what I started with.
Airbrush was a Badger 200.
Yeah, that's what I started with, and even with relatively little experience, going back 30 years to 1987, I was immediately getting, to my mind, the kind of results I'd always dreamt of. I was suddenly doing mottle. I was suddenly doing freehand camouflage, and as like I say, I suddenly felt like, hey, I've arrived now because I'm suddenly up there with the major league. I'm doing schmancy airbrushing.
Some of the finish I was getting, some of the freehand I was getting with my Badger 200 with extra color paint, thinned about 95%. It still remains some of the best freehand work I've ever done. Without a doubt. Some of the I did a couple of Hasegawa F111s back. God, it's hard to believe that's been around 30 years over. And I still have. I've got photographs of them somewhere, but they remain some of the best models I ever painted because I was just really on my game with that, and the equipment was good, the paint was good. When extra color was good, it was really good, and when it was not good, it was really, really not good.
I never got on with it. I really never ever got on with extra color.
I used it almost exclusively for many years, but like I say, it could be quite variable, shall we say?
Yeah.
Some pots would never ever dry. I had some pots and the paint remained tacky 6 or 8 months after it was applied, which was not really what you want.
Should we actually? We've been talking about airbrushes. Should we talk about this bad boy? Because you had this for the best part of about 2 years, and
yes.
then I managed to claw it back off of you. I can remember where I was.
I believe you managed to borrow it back off of me. I think that's it.
My name's on the order, chummy. So I remember where we were. We were at Telford, and we were sat round by the little. Is it a Renault or Citroen refreshments van?
Yeah.
And I think Jem was with us as well. And we'd been watching. What's his name? Paul Budzik talking about these, and we were owing Amar about it. And I went onto Amazon, and lo and behold, there was one on Amazon, and it was a silly price, wasn't it, Drew? It was like about.
It was £108, wasn't it?
It was £100. You see. So I ordered it. It came from Japan. It managed to kind of get through, and I remember you saying this is brilliant, and that's the last I saw of it for 2 years. But in the meantime, I kept thinking to myself, perhaps I should have got another one, because in the meantime, the price of it went up and up and up. I think at the moment they're about 380 quid.
Yeah.
This, I don't know what I did, but I scored a bargain with this. But explain to people what is different about this compared to an airbrush.
Effectively, it's a nozzle. It's more of an air gun, although it doesn't have the as many controls as a professional air gun. It does give you. You can get there are fan pattern nozzles and stuff for it.
Yeah.
It's very high flow. It's for putting a lot of paint down quite quickly. And I think, in fact, if people want to have a look back through my YouTube channel, there's some stuff of me painting a chieftain with
that. Was it a chieftain or was it a leopard?
No, it was I'm pretty sure it was a chieftain I sprayed with that. The Tacom chieftain.
Right.
I put base colours down with that. And you can really see how quickly you can lay paint down, getting a really thick, getting a very opaque coat of paint on a 35th scale chieftain, which is not a small tank, was the work of like 3 or 4 minutes.
I tell you what, I dusted this off today because I thought this is what we need to get that British Racing Green on.
Yeah, Jen, it is a tiny spray gun. It doesn't have as many controls as a.
All right, let's just get the
professional ones that you will have used.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a work of art. It's beautifully balanced. I mean, it's quite a heavy bit of kit, but it's beautifully balanced. And for spraying models where you need to get some acreage on, it's fabulous. It is just.
And the thing is as well, because of it's got a really, really, really nice spray pattern. Even if you're using the normal nozzle with the round spray pattern, there's not a large overspray zone with it. So you've got a large fan or a large pattern, but with not a great overspray zone. So you can keep a wet edge really, really easily when you're laying a lot of paint down. And you can work over a model and retain a wet edge.
And that's the key thing, isn't it? To getting a really smooth finish. This is the thing we were kind of like learning from Paul Budzik was it's about wet to wet edges.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised you didn't discuss this on Sunday with Jen. Jen would be Jen would be talking about professional paint finishes and things like that.
We'll do that the next time she's on the show. We'll get her onto her real forte. Oops! And now I've just managed to lose the nozzle off the top of that one.
Oh, you lost!
Right. It just came off.
Stop playing with stuff.
I know. I think I should do this.
Stop playing with airbrushes when you can't focus on them because you're just losing bits. And it's like an Iwata graveyard.
It's an airbrush horror show tonight.
Stop it.
Actually, I will have to dive down under the table and grab that because that is the little tiny nozzle that's come off there. And this is my Badger Chrome, which is a beautiful airbrush. You got a Badger Chrome, haven't you?
I have a Renegade.
Renegade Chrome, yeah.
Renegade Chrome. That one there.
That's it. It's a fabulous airbrush.
That one there. Very nice airbrush indeed, yes.
I carry on talking. I'm just diving under the workbench again.
I don't think you quite appreciate how distracting that is, John.
It's massively distracting. Trust me, it's massively distracting to be trying to concentrate on doing a broadcast when you're suddenly aware that you're murdering airbrushes live on air by dropping crucial bits on the floor here. We'll go looking for it afterwards. It's just, it's really annoying. Yeah, it's Badger Chrome.
That's made of brass as well, so a magnet won't work.
Well, I'm frightened to actually move any limbs here now because I'll kick it into a crevice or something. So, well, that's 2 down. I wonder if I can kill off a 3rd airbrush tonight.
No, don't touch them. Leave them. Leave the poor things. They've done nothing to you.
It would have to be an Iwata and the Badger Chrome and not one of the cheap little fingers. Just like Sod's Law, isn't it? But what do you do on Wednesday night? I watched this confused man from Dudley murder airbrushes live on the internet. It's just like, yeah, it sounds dreadful.
You know, there's a reason there's a reason I haven't taken any of mine apart here tonight.
Oh, it's good. Well, I am that public service warning. I am the think once, think twice, think
airbrush.
Don't disassemble airbrushes live on the internet. And we've also got is it the TR1, the Iwata spray? It's an airbrush.
I did mention that. I've got a TR2. Which, like I say, I liked, and it's a nice airbrush, but it feels, while the spray gun was okay because I was just spraying colour on it, for actually doing airbrushing, if you like, modelling airbrushing and stuff, this just feels unnatural. I tried
actually to do some kind of like fine lining with it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get to grips with it. If you pardon the pun, it just didn't feel right.
Like when you're spraying fine stuff, that does not feel as natural as holding it like a pen.
Yeah, precisely.
You're holding an airbrush like a pen and working. It's just a far more natural way to do it. So whilst I'm glad I bought it and I'm glad I tried it. It's not something I use very often at all now.
It's good for varnishes.
To be honest, John, I still use either the Renegade or the HPCH one with varnishing.
Oh, right. Well, yeah. I tend to use Renegade when I'm not kind of like losing bits of it. I tend to use this. Tends to be my go-to fine lining airbrush because it does spray down to a very nice point, and also it's got the needle limiter on there as well. It means that I can set what I need, and then I can kind of like do fine lining, and I don't have to worry about it. Kind of over spraying or doing too much. Suddenly flooding the surface with paint. Although I do find, even with lacquers, that occasionally I do actually have to wet the nozzle again.
That was exactly what I was going to say about the limiters. Is that the limiters are great, but you can still have a nozzle clag up, and you have to then, wind the limiter back so you can open the nozzle up to clear it, and then find that setting again. So I do use the limiters from time to time, but not as much as one might expect.
I use them all the time.
Generally, I trust my clumsy fingers to find the right needle position.
I see. I can't. I just find after I've tried doing that, but after a while, I just get cramp in my hands, and I can't do that. So the limiter is such a useful device to have.
I think that's one of the other things with experience that people don't expect when they got a double action airbrush is that the way it can make things like, they can end up hurting your hands. You can end up with cramps in your hands and things like that. And you know, that feeling when you've been holding an airbrush for like an hour and you've got an indent in your, you know, in your finger where you've been using it. And I think quite often that perhaps surprises people a bit, that they sort of run into that sort of problem. See, Jen's just said she doesn't use the limiter for that exact reason. Yeah, that's why I don't use it, because you just end up winding it back to clear the to clear the nozzle, and then having to wind it back in. So, although, you know, clearly it works for some people, it must work, or they wouldn't have them.
Yeah.
It's the result of experience, isn't it? But I'm with Jen on that, in that I don't tend to use the limiters. And to be fair, with the other thing is, with some of the higher end airbrushes, you're getting a very smooth, easy action, so you don't tend to get the hand cramps and stuff quite as much.
Well, what I tend to do with the, say, I got here my HP, sorry, it's my Revolution CR, is when I was doing fine lining work with this, I was doing what I used to do with the Badger 200, and that was actually kind of get the needle back to almost a point where it was spraying a fine line without actually pulling the needle back. But then it was giving me that option, you know, it was giving me that bit of control either way, rather than going from an absolute dead setting to pulling the needle back and then getting paint. I was presetting it to actually be almost putting paint down when you press the nozzle down.
Yeah.
But that could just be me. That could just be me treating single action airbrushes like I'm using a Badger 200. But
I will say one of the things that I just had to remind myself. I'm just going to switch to the other camera. One of the things I did like when we're talking about needle limiters on the Harder and Steenbeck is that you can set that, your limiter, to have very limited. And if you do want to clear the nozzle, there's a spring-loaded part that comes back, and then you can clear the nozzle and then just push it back in.
I have never owned a Harder and Steenbeck airbrush.
So that's, I mean, in terms of design, that's one aspect of that I really like. So that would allow you to clear the nozzle and then just push that button in, and then you set the limiter again.
That's pretty neat.
And then when you want to just pull that out, and so that's one, shall we say, one part of the Harder and Steenbeck that I will say is a really good. Is a really nice design feature. It's just a pity I don't like the rest of the airbrush.
Yeah. I'll tell you something that I noticed from seeing photos that Roy Sutherland has occasionally posted up, and Kim Smith as well, from their time working with ILM, and also just pictures I've seen from ILM and other model shops, Hollywood model shops around that kind of era, is how often you see them airbrushing and they're using, is it Parsh H's?
Yeah,
Parsh H, which is, it's like the Parsh equivalent of a Badger spray gun. It's an external mix spray gun.
Yeah, but you have to look at the kind of what they were trying to achieve when they were doing it. You know, this.
Yeah, but the thing is that those Parshes were just bomb proof.
Yeah,
they were absolutely reliable for what they were doing. They're putting lacquer paint through them, but they just knew all the time that if you plug one of those in, 9 times out of 10 it was going to work for you.
I would say 999 times out of 1,000 it's going to work for you. But also they weren't trying to achieve ultra fine finishes, because that's not what you want for filmmaking.
No, absolutely.
Stuff has to be hugely exaggerated for film effects.
Having said that, though, when you see there was somebody posted up it was like a detailed kind of walk around of the large Millennium Falcon model, the original one, or rather as it was up until Return of the Jedi, and the paint job on that is superb. You know, bear in mind it's a big model. You know, talking about it's a big model. But even so, it's still, when you look at the close-ups of it, there was some really fine kind of work that was never going to be appreciated on the big screen. Although it does kind of
experience, isn't it?
Yeah,
professional modelers doing it day in, day out. They're gonna get that kind of experience, aren't they? So, but there's my takeaway for airbrushing. Spend the most amount of money you can.
Yeah. Forego a couple of kit purchases.
Forego a couple of kits, and don't be scared to wait a month if it means you get another 30 or 40 quid.
Yeah.
To put into it.
As I've said this before. About there was a thing that this week somebody got a bit sniffy about Despy nippers, and they said, well, it's all right if you can afford those kind of things, and it's like, well, it's a couple of average kits. Right, you could go out and buy a couple of average kits and not build them. They're going to be doing nothing. You could use that money, go out and buy a pair of Despy nippers, and you're using them every time you sit down at the workbench. Every time. And trust me, I mean, this goes back to Telford 2018. No, 2018. When I was doing, we suddenly had to kind of put together a demo very quickly, and it was just the look of sheer horror at me kind of butchering away at a kit with a pair of ordinary cutters and a blade. And I was literally frog marched over to the stand and bought a pair of Despy cutters. And when I sat down and started using them, it was just like, I get it. Yeah. And then Matt Whiting came over, and he's like, oh, although those cutters, and I was like, yeah, have a go at him, Matt. And he just went, And it's
well,
like everybody...
do you know the person I remember, one of the people I remember most clearly, and sorry if you're watching, Rob Monfey, but you'd spent months saying they can't be that good. It's just another pair of cutters, and I gave him a pair of cutters and a piece of sprue, and you could actually see the epiphany as he snipped
the lights and the choir of music, and it was just kind of
because you have to tell people don't squeeze as hard as you would with a normal pair of nippers because you'll ruin them. And it's just the way they just slice through like butter.
They go through bone like butter. And it was and it was just so funny. But the point was, I remember I came back from Telford that year with my Despy nippers and my beautiful light that I got at the show, because I needed a light for the demo as well. And when I actually kind of sat down the kind of day after coming back from Telford and started work, it just felt like I had a brand new workbench, and all it was a pair of nippers and a new light. Yeah. But
Rob, guess what I bought next?
There we go. But the thing is it's amazing how just two things like that can change your modeling perspective. But they get used every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time. They get used, because they are a work-a-day item. You just use them for every single model, because the other brand name is God Hands. Yeah, they do a single blade as well, and I think even Meng do
one,
but they're the Despy cutters rebranded.
Yeah,
and I think I even think, to me, I might have released a single edged.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a hold of one of those.
A single blade set now. But yeah, I mean, in terms of nippers, if you haven't tried either the Despy, any of the single blade, the single edged ones,
guillotine action,
they will just blow you away. The newest Tamiya set is wonderful as well, Mike says. That's what I'm saying. It's a new world, isn't it? It's a new world.
Well, mine are probably, they've still got life in them, but I have noticed after 2.5 years of constant use now, that I do have to kind of go in there and just adjust them a bit more now.
Yeah, I think
they start to lose their edge.
I'm on my second set, and I'll probably need a third because, one, I'm clumsy, but two, whilst they're 35 quid, I mean, I don't think three years use out of a tool for 35 quid.
Well, let's put it this way: how much would you be spending on Swan Morton scalpel blades and Swan Morton craft blades over 3 years? I venture it'd be more than 35 quid.
Yeah, so I think that in terms of tools in the last decade, certainly single edge cutters are the biggest, one of the biggest sort of revolutions. I think Simon Dixon said, "Can they be resharpened?" I think technically they could, but then you're into having to adjust the cutting and all that sort of stuff, which is going to be beyond the realms of most people. Certainly with the tools that come in the box that you get with them. Can they be resharpened? Any tool can be resharpened. Can it be done at home by the average modeler? Probably not.
No, and I think if
probably not, and maintain the action that you've got. Because they are fragile, they will punish clumsy use.
Yes, they are. I mean, when it comes to chopping up sprue, especially when I start putting it into the bins, I'll always get the the butcher's tools out for that.
Yeah,
the Best Buy ones are normal. Yeah, exactly.
Normal.
But yeah, this kind of fits into our theme that, you know, if you are able to invest in your workbench, it is better, as I say, it's better to forego some kits and put that money into the equipment. You know, and frankly, you know, that's what Chris Ellis wrote in How to Go Plastic Modeling 50 odd years ago, and so that advice still is relevant. You know,
it was right in 1968. It's right in 2021, isn't it? It's just, you know, you will always be repaid handsomely by spending money on decent tools.
Yeah,
and that goes for everything from a scalpel to an airbrush.
Yeah.
To a sanding stick, to whatever. It just, you know, you do get exactly what you pay for.
Well, talking of sanding sticks, have you tried these Infinity ones?
No, I haven't. I must.
They're fab.
I must get some. I've heard you saying good things. So I'll. Is it premium?
Yeah, it's premium. Although the ones I put the link up to are actually the single-sided ones. These are the double-sided sponge ones. So these are the ones to go for. Which I think they're not. I think they were out of stock last time I checked. But I will go back and have a. They do like a multi-pack. It's about 15 quid. I know, again, people go, oh, look at you lot throwing money at your hobby, you know, but it's, you know, I'm not going to go to the pub, you know, and, you know, it's, you know, it's...
I think, you know, yes, I do spend good money on my hobby. But I try and resist the temptation to feel guilted into apologising for that. You know, I work 5 days a week and normally 6 days a week. I do overtime. I earn a reasonable wage. I meet my commitments. I'll spend money on my hobby. And I don't think there's any. Most people can afford to spend a little bit of money on the hobby, or they wouldn't be doing the hobby.
That's true. I mean, I'm always mindful of. You know, we've said this before. When you see people getting bent out of shape over plastic toys, and you know, you and I have said the same thing before. It's a luxury. These are luxury items. They're not, you know, they're not essential. You know, and I am constantly minded of this every time I head out of Lidl. Other supermarkets are available, because you know, I always kind of like, you know, stick a couple of things from my basket into the food bank. And I think to myself, you know, I do have pangs of conscience here when I'm kind of like playing around with airbrushes. I think to myself, there are people struggling to put food on the table, and here's me. I'm guilt tripping myself. It's ridiculous, but Drew, you know me. You know how easy it is for me to guilt trip myself over something like this. You know,
but the other thing is, if you spend good money, they'll last as well.
Yeah, precisely.
You know, if you spend £200 on an Iwata airbrush, it is going to last you longer than a £35 Chinese clone. It simply will, because it's quality components from the start to the finish. And thing with Iwata is their needles and their nozzles, they look really, really fine, but they're incredibly strong. They're made from really, really high quality materials. So you really got to work hard to bend an Iwata needle. You've really got to work hard. Although the nozzle is only made of brass, it's really top quality brass. So you're not really going to be able to force the needle in and split or splay the nozzle like you can with cheaper stuff. Rob's exactly right. You know,
Marino says, "Are you gentlemen live on Facebook as well?" Marino, we are live on Facebook, Twitter, and the YouTube. We are. It's global domination. Honestly,
is this on YouTube? Is it?
This is we live stream to the YouTube, that Twitter, and Facebook. So
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, it's all good. Actually, before we wrap tonight, I do want to. I just got to reach over and get something. If I can see it, here it is. I want to give a shout out to Tim Maunda tonight, who got me this for my birthday. It is it's the paper shaper.
Oh yes, yeah, the VMS stuff.
VMS stuff. I'm just going to have to invest in some of the paper now, but I also need to invest in some of that VMS satin varnish. Here we go. See, I know that's a guarantee. Now you get yours direct from VMS, don't you?
I do, but their shop is currently shut. There is a UK distributor for them now, and they appear to have everything in stock, but I can't remember who they are. But if you go onto VMS's own website, it will tell you who the local who the UK distributor is for VMS. But you need that in your life.
Yeah.
That is the best varnish.
I am going to go onto the VMS website, get some of the actual paper, but get some of those varnishes as well, because Martin Kovac, I think, introduced us to it because he was raving about how brilliant it was. But yeah, I do need to check out some of that VMS stuff. It's time for me to do a bit of name dropping. Andy Hills says, does John know if Al Murray uses an airbrush? He's got an airbrush, but he doesn't tend to use it because of just kind of like, having family around and whatnot. So he just prefers to use paintbrushes and things. So, which is fair enough, There
you go, Scale Model Shop in the UK for VMS.
VMS at Scale Model Shop. Excellent. Yeah, I'm going to.
Thank you, Brian and Dave.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's the best varnish, the best varnish ever.
And you put it on
this week.
Sorry,
have you ordered any kits this week?
Have I ordered any kits this week?
Yeah.
Have you
ordered a special Hobby Whirlwind yet?
I'm probably conscious of the fact that Andy's probably got one, but I was hoping if it's turned up that Andy was going to send me a message to say he's got them in. If they're in, I'm going to order one. So, or actually probably even make the trek into Bristol to actually pick them up in person.
En route.
We'll just have a quick shout out to everybody who's tuned in tonight. Right, here we go. Deep breaths here. Say hello to Pavel Krufovic, Anthony Bird, John Patrick Huston, Dave Swindle, Paul Mithigan, Rob Monfee, Douglas Hunter, Steve Moores, Rob Herring, Jerry Doyle, Brian Wilton, Jim Castwell, Greg Woodbridge, Marino, Ian Goldstraw, Mark Ryan, Jen Wright, Michael Scott, Christian Gerard, who says hello from the Mosel Valley in Germany. Good vibes. Good vibes to you, Christian. We have Andy Brennan, Stephen Pryor, Johan Olivier, Claudio Saran-Biondi, screen down, Mike Reeves, Dave Mummery. It's like a who's who of our viewers tonight. Andrew Hills from Antics Bristol, www.anticsonline.uk. That was a pretty good thing. John Walker, hello John, up in Scotland. Scrolls down. Mike Baldwin, not that one. Well, the thing is, Johnny Briggs, the late actor who played Mike Baldwin, lived. I'm not kidding. The next street down from me.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he lives in Portishead. Bumped into him in Waitrose a few times. Scroll down. Colin Strachan, Simon Dixon, Chris Aliung. Oh, it's honestly, I've never seen. It's because you're on tonight. You're the star draw.
Was it ever thus?
It was ever thus. So, as Mike says, buy cheap, buy twice. Absolutely. Which is why I bought two of those cheap airbrushes, although both of them are still working. So, we like to... Honestly, I completely agree. But I do think sometimes I'm fully prepared to put my money where my big, fat, Dudley mouth is, just to see whether these things are going to work or not. If they don't and they're complete junk, at least we have the honesty to be able to turn around and say...
I think the thing is, the vast majority of them are going to work the first time. It's whether they stay working.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm punishing this at the moment in terms of the amount of use this Fender FE 180 is getting, and it's still kind of holding up its end of the bargain. So we will wait and see. I'm actually going to turn that into an article, probably for Brett's magazine. So I'm going to be airbrushing something with it just to show, what can be done. But like I say, we'll get you one, and I would be very interested in your assessment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to always happy to check this stuff out. So.
Right. I mean, yes. Any other business?
Ding, ding. Wasn't there anything from Spencer?
Oh yes, there was. Yes, I almost forgot. Yes, thanks for the prompt.
Yeah.
Glad one of us is on the ball tonight.
Well,
the one not murdering airbrushes.
Yeah.
At least the nights will be memorable. People will remember this. It'll be a night that went down in infamy, a bit like Orson Welles with his War of the Worlds scare. Here we go. Spencer has sent us an update on the Kinetic Cara kit, which was kindly sent to us by the good folk at Jadlam, also in Somerset. It's very, very kind of local tonight. And as you can see, Spencer in the end decided to go for A593, which is in this kind of anodized metal kind of grey finish. I'm not quite sure. I don't know if Spencer said whether this is absolutely finished or not, but as you can see,
isn't it?
Yeah, I know it's pretty neat.
I love the way he's captured the anodized finish just perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hasn't he, Fred?
It's fabulous. As we said, this is a big old aeroplane. It is a bit of a monster, this. So I'm sure Spencer will be putting up pictures of this on his own page and on.
I'm free to do ZD485 now, aren't I?
You are, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I think he will be putting up pictures on the Interesting Modelling Company page as well. But that's just, isn't that fabulous? Absolutely fabulous.
And it looks like an absolutely fabulous model as well.
Kinetic really have kind of, have announced their arrival now. I know they kind of had a little bit of a rough ride with the F-16s when they came out. What was that, about 10 years ago now?
12 years ago, yeah.
12 years ago. But I think they're very much now clearly established themselves as one of the major players. Yeah, I don't know where mine is. He's outside arguing with other cats. Yeah. Oh, that's not yours. That's the neighbour's cat that just lives with you.
Not my cat. He just lives with me.
Yeah, absolutely. So big thank you to Jadlam for supplying that kit. And, it's head over to them at www.jadlam.com. And actually looking forward to going down and visiting them at some stage in the next few months. Yeah. Crossed if things start to ease off a bit. But we'll just have to wait and see.
It's probably the most local model shop to me now.
Yeah, I'll say it's either that or Froome or Antics, and that's it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
either that or over the border into Dorset.
Yeah, of the three, Jadlam is definitely the closest.
Yeah.
And
we got Premium and Western-super-Mare do mail order as well. So Somerset's starting to become a bit of the old modelling capital of England. I modestly say,
a modelling hotbed.
I think it is. It's like I think it's the spiritual centre of England. I think
it's the ley lines.
It is the ley lines. It is. It's all coming from Glastonbury Tour and all that kind of stuff. So,
to Mike, yes, you can. In fact, it's
all right. That's it's just sorry. I gotta make sure I can. Can I bring my Dachshunds on the next time I am live with you? You can bring your Dachshunds, Mike. You certainly can. So I think that's it, really. I'm now going to have to carry on the humiliation of searching for the survivors of the Great Airbrush Massacre, May 2021, on Facebook.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I would say I'm a warning from the future, but I'm not messing around with time travel again, honestly.
I'm just glad you weren't the captain of the first boat through the Suez after they freed that other one.
let's just say my family history with the Suez Canal is problematical. So
boss. Yeah. You're not going to believe this.
Yes, honestly, it's true. I'll tell you that story another time when I tell the story about how I got expelled from school as well. So anyway, you back on Sunday? Are you working shifts?
I can come back on Sunday.
Yeah, I think we need to do it. We need to do a new show on Sunday, and potentially it might be a new show with a great big. Do you know what? A great big not only a great big West Country aeroplane, but where was the whirlwind built, Drew?
Oh, in the building I currently work in.
Yes, but which fine county in this country of ours?
Well, Somerset, wasn't it?
It's Somerset. It's
Somerset, wasn't it? And like I say, I work in the building where it was made. So it's really nice actually, because it's kind of people forget the history of where I work now that we're called Leonardo and stuff. They've got like a trail around the site of historical stuff from around the site that people can follow if they want. But most people just tend to forget that, you know, we've got this history.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like I'm kind of almost looking for an inn of somewhere I can build that whirlwind and get it on site somewhere under glass.
Yeah, you need it to be in like that Spitfire at Cosford.
Yeah.
You need it to be bang somewhere kind of like, really kind of, yeah. That's a good project actually. I think that would be a really good.
So I might have a little think about that and build that, because I'm going to be starting that whirlwind very soon after it arrives. As I think we all are. It's going to be almost.
It's going to be a whirlwind off, isn't it?
Yeah.
Actually, before I go, I will do any other business, and that is when I do go to Frome, go through a little village called Pensford, just outside Bristol, around an area called Temple Cloud. It's honestly the geography of driving from here to Frome is just like so many weird.
Mining village, isn't it?
It is. It's a mining village. In fact, we never went to the miners' coffee shop, which is a fantastic little place. But we will do at some stage. We'll do, when it's safe, we'll do a Frome trip. Anyway, you go through Pensford, and Pensford is where, and I've forgotten what his real name is now, but Pensford is where the musician Acker Bilk, Bernard Stanley, that's where the musician Acker Bilk was born. Acker Bilk, Stranger on a Shore. Now, one of the weirdest experiences I ever had was going to the IPMS Belgium show back in 1993 with Mike Holloway of Reheat Models. And Mike drove to Belgium. And we were driving on the outskirts of Antwerp when I saw a building which was the Acker Bilk Snooker Hall. Now, I was literally craning my neck out the car, and Mike says to me, he says, "Oh, what's up, mate?" And I said, "Mike," we just passed the Acker Bilk Snooker Hall. Now, I'd love to know what the story was behind that, whether there was just some kind of guy in Belgium who was a big fan of Acker Bilk and snooker and decided to combine the two.
It's an odd one, isn't it?
Or it was some kind of expat living over there who decided that, he wanted to have... Honestly, it would almost be as bizarre as driving through Somerset and coming across the Hercule Poirot kind of needlecraft shop or something. None of it made sense whatsoever. But every time I drive to Frome and I drive through
Neil Armstrong patisserie.
Yeah, exactly. And every time I drive through Pensford, I see the little blue sign. Bernard Stanley was born here, Acker Bilk, and I think to myself, the Acker Bilk Snooker Hall in Antwerp. Anyway, on that disturbing note, on that chilling note, we'll see you all on Sunday. Thanks for showing up tonight. We do appreciate it. As always, stay safe, stay out of trouble. And so from myself and Drew, from our different ends of Somerset, we'll see you all on Sunday. So
good night all. Take care.
Living out.